Okay, so let's go. It is February and we only have one more month of super cold weather. I'm hoping things always get better in March. They always get better on
Always
March.
do, hopefully.
We have 4 more weeks of winter. Fingers crossed.
I was reading an article earlier today that said that Homer has 4 feet of sea ice from Homer all the way out, all the way around it, which hasn't happened in years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really cold.
Yeah, it's very cold.
Yeah.
So there's the February calendar. There'll be 3 meetings with mentees and February 5th, 12th, and 19th, and we'll dig down deeper into what those meetings are going to look like. So in a perfect world, you do 3 visits into your mentee's classroom. Remember that every mentoring partnership is different, so there's lots of flexibility here. We provide the money for your sub. However, we don't provide the manpower. So in a perfect world, Jennifer, I know your secondary, you would see one period in February and then a different period in March and then another different period in April, because you know that the dynamics change in every single period depending on the students that are there. And so it's good to see 3 different classrooms, so then it just opens up the door to what supports your mentee might need dependent on different periods of the day. And we all know that one period seems harder than others. That's just the way it goes. And so I would let your mentee choose. What I always let the mentee be the decision maker and let him choose when you come. However, it would be good in a perfect world if you saw 3 different classrooms, February, March, and April. And there is a process. There's a process to everything. And so every time we've been meeting, I just kind of line that process out. If you decide that you want to have a sub, you would reach out to me with the date. You get your own sub through absence management. We provide the funding, but not the manpower. And then you'll get a sign-in sheet, and then both you and your mentee would need to sign it and return it back to me. And when you get that sign-in sheet, I would give you the steps to fill out your time card. It's in service at the end of the day, and the subcode to set your secretary up for success. So those are just the steps.
So I have a question for you. Could I do it during my distance ed time? Because I'm half-time KCHS, half-time distance ed. So
Absolutely.
I don't have students in my classroom for those distance ed 4 periods of the day. So I wouldn't need a sub.
Fine. Perfect.
Okay.
Yep. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. Sometimes you don't need a sub. And
I
said,
would not need to do that process, right?
No,
at all.
You wouldn't.
I would just need to do my document so that you have record of me doing it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, the lesson look fors, I don't require. I mean, when you go into the classroom and you fill out your lesson look fors, that's between you and your mentee. I don't feel like I want to look at those. Those are between you and your mentee. What I would ask that you do is just fill out your Foursquare and do the debrief process and fill out your Foursquare.
Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Now this month, when we talk about that lesson look fors, that form you were talking about, it calls out the 4 big ticket items. The learning target, we talked about that last month, the engagement. And now that's where we're going to focus in today. And this month in February, we're going to look at engagement and lesson design. Next month will be checks for understanding, and April will be closure. So there is that lesson look fors document. And like I said before, we're really zeroing in on engagement for this session. And there are 3 different kinds of engagement. Behavioral is all about, are students doing what you're asking them? Are they on task? Are they behaving the way I'm asking them to behave? The second kind of engagement is effective. Do the students like the lesson? Do they like the topic? Are they interested in the learning that's happening? How do they feel? Last is the cognitive engagement, and that's all about, did the students learn what was intended? Was the learning target achieved? Now, the Charlotte Danielson framework looks at engagement in this light. That's why I think it's important to look at engagement in that way, because we are all evaluated on cognitive engagement. And I think it's important to frame engagement this way, knowing that behavioral and effective engagement come into play as well.
So Michelle, before you move on, did you send us that document in the lesson? I know that you gave us a little picture of it in the January 15th document, but did you send us an actual one of that look fors?
Yeah, I have
separately?
it. Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
get it for you right now. Here it is. I
Okay.
kind of went ahead in my slides just because I want to give it to you right now. But here is the actual document itself. I'm going to drop it into the chat,
Perfect.
and then I'll go back. We'll talk more about those lesson look
Make a
fors.
copy. That's where I want it. Perfect.
So engagement is kind of a loaded term, and I think every teacher has their own perception of what good engagement looks like. Charlotte Danielson looks at engagement in this light. So I think we're going to just take a minute to read and reflect. Page 71 in the white book of Charlotte Danielson's evaluation instrument, she frames engagement in this light. So I just ask that you read through the 5 bullet points and reflect. How does this affirm or contrast your perception of good engagement? I'm not going to ask you to drop anything in the chat. I just want to take some time to just look at it and think about your own practice and how it levels up with your perception of engagement. Are you ready to move on? Okay. Okay, so let's get into the first week, February 5th. I ask that you revisit parent conferences. They're coming up again, February 15th and 16th. You'll want to revisit the fall conferences, and it is worth a conversation to reflect on how the February conferences might look different than the fall conferences. Your mentee has done the conferences one time, and you know, that was their plan A. It's always good to see how they're going to shift and modify and change when they do it for the second time. This month, we're also going to be talking about lesson design and engagement. It's good to expose your mentee to different lesson designs as they build their own pedagogy and style. As veteran teachers, we have already developed our styles. We know what works best for us as teachers, but giving mentees lots of different varieties and lots of different options give them an opportunity to create their own style. So again, going back to page 72 in the white book, Charlotte Danielson calls out that lessons should have a recognizable beginning, middle, and end. And as a secondary teacher, secondary teachers have a lot more flexibility in creating their own engagement strategies and lesson design, because in the elementary levels, we are pretty locked into Amplify, CKLA, and iReady. So secondary teachers definitely have a lot more flexibility in the way they're developing their lessons. Charlotte Danielson says that there should be a recognizable beginning, middle, and end to every lesson. The I do, we do, you do, this is an oldie but goodie. and I bring it up because it becomes really relevant when you think about the science of reading. And there's a lot of research to support this I do, we do, you do. And when I was in the classroom, it was an I do, we do, you do, that guided release of responsibility. And now they've added a collaborative piece, which is called y'all do. So the teacher models.
Y'all
and,
do.
you know, exactly, y'all do. That's that collaborative.
Are we all Southern?
And there's research behind it as well. And I actually have I have some information on it. I've made a graphic. However, I'll drop this resource in the chat for you to look at. You can print it off and just have it. It's that whole guided release of responsibility that if this lesson design fits your teaching style, there would be a lot of modeling happening. And then the scaffolding piece is that that's an opportunity to scaffold the learning, do some checks for understanding, and before you release it to students to do independently. The I do, we do, you do, and that y'all do, that collaborative piece is become an integral piece of that lesson design, because it gives students an opportunity to try things on for themselves with a partner before they move to that independent work.
Yeah, I do that a lot in my class. So I teach algebra and geometry, and every lesson has an activity with it, like everyone. And it could be like a scavenger hunt or a puzzle or something. So, you know, I do notes, and then they do some, you know, check the notes, and we do a couple problems together. And then they do this activity, and then they have their homework, which is the you do. And that's what I assess them on, is the you do part.
Right.
So when they're working collaborative and stuff, there's no point there. I mean, that's all learning still. It's not the end of, so.
And a secondary level high school kids, they would much rather relate to their peers than to their teacher. So it's a great opportunity for them to scaffold their learning with the peer.
Right.
For sure. I don't know. Do you find that as well? I find that with the teenagers, they'd rather chat with their classmates rather than chat with you.
Yes. And it's really hard to get them to chat on topic.
Yes, good point.
Like, they love to just chat, but getting them focused on that topic and chatting about that is sometimes a challenge.
I can see it with teenagers. That is for sure.
Yeah.
So for the week of February 12th, there's a lot for the week of February 12th. It's just, you know, it is what it is. We're gonna focus in on more lesson design and engagement strategies, and then talk a little bit about instructional days. You may or may not have done your February classroom visit by the week of February 12th. If you have, that's great. Again, that lesson look for is an opportunity for you to debrief with your mentee, and it's for you and your mentee's eyes only. Do not feel like you have to turn that into me. But what I do recommend is that you sit down and talk with them about that. If you look at the sample that I have up here, you'll notice that it's just a couple phrases for the learning target. I'm not writing a huge amount of information. It's just targeting these big ticket items. This particular one, it talks about the learning target is producing and writing diagraphs. It's an elementary, obviously. The engagement piece was choral response, writing words on whiteboards. Checks for understanding is the teacher was looking at the whiteboards, and there was a thumbs up, thumbs down activity. And the closure was that the teacher simply reiterated the 4 diagraphs. What you will notice is that the what went well box is filled up as many things as I can fit in that box. And that's, you know, if you think about the feedback triangle, you want to give as much positive based feedback as possible. Be your mentee's cheerleader, give them tons and tons of great things that are going well in the classroom, because at the end of the day, they don't see those things. They only see that 1 or 2 thing that didn't go well. And they're gonna focus on that one child or that one teenager in the back that, you know, wasn't working, but it's your opportunity to just really point out all the good things that are happening in that classroom. And then it's always good to scribe one question, and that kind of just drives the conversation. It could just be, how do you think the lesson went? It could be just be like that, or it could be more targeted. Which students need more work on the learning target itself? So, and I leave that to your expertise to figure out what would be a good question to drive some debrief, the debrief conversation at the end. So that's just an example of lesson look for.
I feel that every time I have a formal evaluation from the administration, I always focus in on what I knew was wrong. And they're like, what? I didn't even notice that. And I'm like,
right?
Yes, that would happen. You did. It was the worst thing ever. Right. It's like you have this like laser focus into the negative, because we're always harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else.
Correct.
And yeah. So all those positive things are great.
Yes. It's so true, Jennifer. Okay, so this week, you know, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Madeline Hunter. Yeah, Madeline Hunter is an oldie but goodie, and this is actually the model I used in my teacher prep 25 years ago. I do think that it's relevant today. There's a lot of pieces to it, and I think that teachers are a little more flexible now. But I think that the pieces in this Madeline Hunter are still relevant, and it's good just to remind your mentee of this model. It's just an oldie but goodie. And the last one is the workshop model, which kind of it incorporates the I do, we do, you do into small groups. So the hourglass model, I've always called this model the hourglass model, but there's actually a real name for it. It's called the workshop model. And it's a model in which in a whole group setting, you might do the anticipatory set, the learning targets. You might do some modeling, that I do piece, maybe some we do in the whole group, but then you drill down to small groups that might be focused on specific learning needs. It's that opportunity to set kids that can do on their own, while you focus in on those kids who might need a little more instruction, or even differentiation based on an assessment that they had previously. It's really that opportunity to drill down into small group instruction, and then before the end of the class period, you move back out to whole group instruction for closure and reflection. And it's called the hourglass model, which really takes a lot of the Madeline Hunter and the I do, we do, you do, and and just reworks this model into an opportunity to drill down to small groups. Oh, I think I missed a slide. Yep, there's the slide. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because this is Amplify CKLA, but like I said before, secondary teachers have a lot more flexibility in their lesson design and their engagement strategies that they employ. Kinder and fifth are really locked in. Kinder to fifth grade teachers are really locked into an ELA curriculum that's actually quite scripted, and so is iReady. So with that said, the engagement piece can be found in the lesson overviews. These lesson overviews kind of detail the activities that support the focus of the learning targets. So I don't want to, I want to make sure that kinder through fifth grade teachers realize that there is true engagement in the Amplify CKLA, and that these overviews give you an opportunity to drill down to those engagement pieces that are happening within Amplify. And then there's a kinder, a second, and a fourth.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I have a kindergartner at Mountain View.
Okay.
And so I get it.
Yep. Yeah, the kinder through fifth, they're really locked into this Amplify CKLA. And I liked it. I think it's good, but it doesn't allow teachers to be as flexible and create their own engagement pieces like secondary have. It's just the nature of the beast right now. We're in a we're in a push for direct instruction in the lower
yeah.
grade levels, and it is what it is. But there is engagement opportunities within Amplify as well as iReady. So iReady calls out the engagement pieces in their purpose. So you can see that if we look at a first grade sample, it says in this session, children continue composing tens with cubes, and the examples encourage children to connect pictures of tens with numbers of tens. So there's the engagement piece right there. So within our math curriculum and within our ELA curriculum, the engagement is built in to the resources. With all that said, there are resources for you to share with your mentee if you want. The district has done quite a bit of PD on Kagan structures. The whole idea behind Kagan structures is getting 100% of students engaging in the content. Doing a structure prevents students from hiding in the classroom. Every student is held accountable for the learning. And Kagan has all these elevated vocabulary: positive independence, individual accountability, equal participation, simultaneous interaction. Really, what it all boils down to is the expectation that 100% of students participate in the lesson. That's really the Kagan structures are boiling down to, as well as the appointments. Appointments are another way to partner students up and get them moving around the classroom, again, with that expectation that 100% of students are participating in the lesson.
Yeah.
And I love a stop and jot. So I have some resources there that I'm going to drop into the chat for you. These may or may not be relevant. However, they're good resources to have. I know as a teacher myself, I may not have used some strategies one year, and then I would have to pull them out of my toolbox the next year because I needed them. Every year looks different depending on your students and what bells and whistles you have to pull out.
Every year.
Yep. Gotta change
Every
that.
year is different. So there's some engagement resources that may be helpful to your mentee, and it's just good to have those, because this may not be a year that a mentee might need them, but it's good to have for next year and other years. And the last thing for the week of February 12th is that instructional day. Your mentee may or may not know that they get an instructional day, and if it's a use it or lose it type thing. Every certified teacher in the district gets that instructional day, but they have to use it. So let your mentee know that they could create a planning day for themselves, or they could go visit other teachers, or you could build your instructional day with your mentee doing something that's going to benefit them in their practice. It's really anything. The only caveat is that they would need to check in with your administrator. It's always a good practice to check in with the administrator, let them know what you're up to, and let your mentee know how you've used your instructional day in past years. And that might get their creative juices flowing. Oh, it looks like Jen is, Jennifer, are you there? I didn't see that you had joined. Do you have a question?
But can you guys hear me?
There she is. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, that's so weird. I've been watching you guys and talking, and I'm like, I think that I can't be seen or heard. Yeah, no, I've been here. Hi.
Hi.
My question was about on the last screen. I'm not familiar with the appointments. And when I was just looking at that, my guess is that kids write in 4 names of classmates.
Correct. Right.
And
This particular one,
you say, go to your 12 o'clock appointment and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so it gives them an opportunity, because oftentimes you might say, just turn and talk to your neighbor. This gives them an opportunity to actually create appointments with other kids that aren't in their proximity where they sit during the day. And it gives you an opportunity to strategically partner kids as well. But yeah, you just tell them, okay, everyone, go meet with your 3 o'clock appointment, and give them the directions on what that appointment could look like. Did you did you get the resources in the chat box? Were you able to get those?
I've got, I have, yeah, I think the first one that I got was the, one for the setting up the, expectations for the observation. So if there was
Okay,
one before that, then I didn't, but I've gotten 5, so 4, 5.
okay, here's the appointments resource. I'll drop that in the chat for you. And they're
Make
also
sure
on
she
the
gets the
Foursquares.
check-in
Wow.
document too.
That one I
And
have, the one that's that we're filling out before we do our observation. Yeah.
The lesson look fors.
Yeah,
Okay.
that one I've
And then these are just the engagement resources that may or may not be helpful this year, but it's kind of good to provide those resources to your mentee. And they're also on the Foursquares as well. So they're linked here in the chat, and they're also linked in the Foursquares.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. Those are great.
And I think I stopped at the instructional day. Remind your mentee that every certified teacher gets an instructional day every year, and it's a use it or lose it. And so you could really strategically plan an opportunity for them to use their instructional day. And so I just wanted to remind everyone about those instructional days. And the last week of the month, as always, is the first days of school reading debrief. I'm hoping that the big takeaway from the reading is that the learning target, what you want students to know or be able to do, should not be a mystery to kids. It should be everybody should know what they're supposed to be learning. And I always tell teachers it's perfectly okay to announce it at the beginning of the lesson. It all starts with the learning target and then matching the engagement activities to the learning target. Another takeaway is that the Wong book, they use the learning triangle with objectives, instruction, and assessment on each one of the triangle points. I like to use the lesson look fors. That's just my style, but it's really the same concepts. Objectives translate to learning targets. Instruction relates to engagement and that closure, that lesson design. And assessment really translates to checks for understanding. So although Wong uses the learning triangle, the lesson look fors pick up those same big ideas. For March, the reading is pages 242 to 276. Again, it's on the Foursquare. And we're going to be spending the rest of the year on that big idea from the Wong book, that effective teachers design lessons for mastery. And so last month was the learning objective. This month was engagement. Next month will be checks for understanding, and April will be a closure. So again, we spent quite a bit of time on classroom management. We spent some time on positive expectations, and now the rest of our time is going to be spent on effective teachers design lessons for mastery. And the readings reflect that. Our next mentor Zoom is February 29th. Mark your calendars. And the last thing of the Zoom time would be to get into your Google Drive. Make sure you have your February Foursquares and take a look at the website, the new teacher website. There is a February checklist and February resources, and FYI, what the February resources and the February checklist really relate to what you're doing with new to profession teachers. So everything is pretty much a match. So check out that new teacher website and make sure you have your
share permissions on that one.
Yeah.
on the
'cause it's
February
blocked.
checklist.
Yeah.
Not again. Okay, I will. I have to remember.
It happens to everybody all the time.
Yep.
I will. I'm making myself a note. I'll do that.
Mm.
The thing is that I just, I'm just like everybody else. I copy from the last month And I just assumed that if it's shared out to everybody in January, it should automatically be shared out to
Right.
everybody in February, but that is not the case.
No, I know. It should listen to you.
So I'm glad you
be
figured that
given.
out before somebody else did.
No worries.
So that's all I have for you for this session. I'm open to any questions you have about any of the information that was presented or any mentoring questions you have. And I just want to take the time to thank you for everything you're doing for your mentees. They're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
I have a question. Is there
Yes.
anything that I need to do when I'm taking so Cora and I are gonna do the morning of the 27th. I'm gonna be with her. And
Mhm.
then the afternoon of the 27th, I'm gonna use as a half a Letters Day. So I'm guessing they're different codes.
Yes, they
And do
they
I need, in ASAP, can I just do one full day with my sub, or do I have to do 2 half days in order for Katie to be able to input it as 2 different codes?
that's a good question. I'll ask Chrissy about it and I'll find out.
Okay. That was kind of the only thing, was just like technicality wise, I didn't want to put Katie in a bad spot.
Yeah, let me ask Christy and see
Okay.
what she says, because she's our administrative secretary and she passes out those codes.
Awesome.
And she's in charge of PD, so I'll find out for you and I'll let you know. But that's a good question. I remember seeing that on the email.
I think that's it. We're doing great. We're cold. Everybody's cold. Kids are going bananas because they have to be inside at recess, but
Yeah, like I said, it's 4 more weeks. Things always feel better in March. When it hits March 1st, things always get better. So I think we have 1 more month of winter, just funky February, and then things are going to get better in March.
I like
So-
that positive attitude,
Hang in there, 4 more weeks of funky February.
right? Oh, goodness. Alrighty.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, all right. Thanks again for zooming in, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Other than that, have a great evening.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Thanks. You
See ya.
Bye-bye.